used to be that everybody agreed with me that was veterinarians, but now the new students that are getting out, they're not so enamored with veterinary medicine as I think the older ones were. And I think it has a lot to do with the debt. The circle comes around to the VIN Foundation. I have found that VIN is the best part of veterinary medicine for just so many reasons. And finding out about the VIN Foundation on how we can help our veterinary community. Because, I mean, bottom line, all veterinarians, we're all in this great boat. And we need to help each other.
That is veterinarian and VIN Foundation board member, Dr. Jan Bellows. And this is the VIN Foundation's Veterinary Pulse podcast. I'm Jordan Ben-Shia, Executive Director of the VIN Foundation. Join me as I talk with veterinary colleagues about critical topics and share stories. Stories that connect us as humans, as animals, as a veterinary community. This podcast is made possible by individuals like you who donate to the VIN Foundation. Thank you. All donations will be 2, 3, or 4 times matched through December 31st, 2024. If you want to support this podcast, please consider supporting the VIN Foundation. Please check the episode notes for bios, links, and information mentioned. Welcome, Jan. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, Jan is our most recent board member of the VIN Foundation, and I think it's always a good idea to kind of give a peek behind the curtain of who are the amazing humans that are helping to support this organization and their passion of how they got here, and also sharing stories, because that's how we connect. So, Jan, let's start with, share with us your journey to veterinary medicine. Did you have sort of this aha moment when you were 5 and you had an animal like a dog or a bunny, or what was it that brought you here?
What was it that brought me to veterinary medicine? Well, like a lot of veterinarians, I always knew I wanted to be a veterinarian. I mean, from as young, certainly under 10 years old. And we lived in Massapequa Park in Long Island at the time. And there was a forest right by our house. And I would go to the forest almost every day and sit by the water and play with the fish and actually reach into the places that the fish hid, and fascinated by the animals, looked under rocks and saw a bunch of salamanders, took frogs home. So I was very much into animals. And then I got a job with a veterinarian that bred miniature schnauzers.
And so what age were you about that when you got that job?
Probably 12, 13. And I and my parents let me ride a bike, for had to be 4 or 5 miles each way. It was in Farmingdale.
Wow.
I know, which was, I don't think it would happen now, but it was always my passion. I cleaned cages. And
wow.
I knew that we moved to Florida back in 1968 when I was 18 years old, and getting into college was going to be hard because Florida didn't have a veterinary school at the time. So I tried to maximize my opportunity trying to get into veterinary school by just paying a lot of attention to school and becoming very active in organized pre-veterinary medicine there, becoming president of the veterinary club. And I remember that in my interview, the poor interviewers, there were 3 of them, they go through hundreds of interviews. And the always question was, why did you want to become a veterinarian? And I had memorized this. And it was a good 10, 15-minute speech. And one of the interviewers said, "Stop. In 3 words, why do you want to become a veterinarian?" And I said, "Because I really, really want to." And the other interviewer said, "That's 4 words, but we understand. And it was perfect. And I figured, oh well, I'm not going to get in, but fortunately, I got in.
So where did you attend to
I
veterinary
went
school?
to Auburn, and it
Okay.
was a fabulous experience. The little town of Auburn, Alabama, is just so quaint, and everybody is nice, and they say hello to each other, and the vegetables are great. And I got married that year in 1971, and other than going to veterinary school, I tell people it's the well, no, other than getting married, it's the smartest thing that I ever did was going to veterinary school because it's just a phenomenal profession, I find. And it used to be that everybody agreed with me that was veterinarians, but now the new students that are getting out, they're not so enamored with veterinary medicine as I think the older ones were. And I think it has a lot to do with the debt. And there, the circle comes around to the VIN Foundation. I have found that VIN is the best part of veterinary medicine for just so many reasons. And finding
Hmm.
out about the VIN Foundation on how we can help our veterinary community. Because, I mean, bottom line, all veterinarians, we're all in this great boat and
Hmm.
we need to help each other. And in the
Hmm.
VIN Foundation, we can actually help each other, helping with student debt. Because when I got out of veterinary school, I had $8,000 in debt, and I went, and that was um, to me a lot at the time. And that was back in
Right.
1975, and they gave me, I don't think, maybe a 1 or 2% interest rate, and I think
Wow.
10 years to pay it off. And now students are coming out with $200,000-300,000 of debt.
Yeah.
I had one technician probably good 7-8 years ago that didn't want to go to veterinary school, really wanted to be a veterinarian, but didn't want to because of the debt. I talked her into going into veterinary school. She went in, she's out, she's a surgeon now, and everything's fine.
Hmm.
But it really scared them, and it's I feel for the new veterinary students because they they are just so saddled with this monthly payment that they have to make. And I know that VIN Foundation has different ways to help students um, mitigate their stress around the debt and to
Hmm.
different ways of paying off their debt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came out of Auburn, $8,000 in
Yeah.
debt
Yeah.
and married.
I'm married.
And what was your first job out of veterinary school?
Right after veterinary school, we went. I was really lucky to get an internship at the Animal Medical Center in New York City. My intern mates were great. The whole experience, and you show up very early in the morning, you leave very late at night, and you just learn so much. Um,
Hmm.
and from there, well, we had a daughter. Um, that was back in 1976, and then moved back to Florida and opened up well, I worked for a veterinarian for a year and decided I didn't want to work for a veterinarian. I wanted to do my own thing. So I opened up a shopping center practice in a place called Pembroke Pines, and that was for 23 years.
So
Yeah,
you started your own
yeah,
practice a year out of veterinary
yeah,
school?
I did. I did. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
and it
Okay.
was great. It was a great experience at a very blue collar neighborhood. It taught me a lot. My father-in-law was a business executive and taught me so much about business. My dad was a pharmacist and my mom was a teacher, and they knew nothing about business at all.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
didn't get any business acumen, but my father-in-law was very instrumental in that. Over the years, we had two more children, so we have three now, and our family got so big, we needed to move from our little house in Pembroke Pines to a place called Weston. And there was a area where they were building professional buildings. We inquired getting a property there, and they didn't want a veterinarian because dogs poop. Uh, so So,
Newsflash.
newsflash. So, with the help of the mayor at the time, we got approved. We've been in Weston now since 1999.
So what did you do with that first practice? Did you still own it?
No, it was a disaster. You kind of learn through your mistakes. And the practice was very successful. And I sold it to some people um, because it was a shopping center practice. There was no real estate. We had a very high end clientele, but it was small, and I couldn't sell it to high end entrepreneurs. There were certainly no consolidators at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and I wound up selling it to a veterinarian who made payments for 3 months. And that was it. And I didn't sue her or go for the payments.
Oh, as in she owed more and she just didn't
And
pay
she
you.
didn't pay. And she didn't
Oh,
pay.
wow.
And she said she'll send dental referrals to me in my new practice. And, just that all fizzled. So the first practice, even though I thought it was great and I would sell for a year's gross, uh, I don't think I made very much. In fact, I know I didn't make
Yeah.
very, very much. So I started this practice in Weston with virtually no clients, but it's a
And how
great
far is
area.
Weston from where you were before?
13 miles.
Oh, so you're pretty
Yeah, yeah,
close. Okay.
yeah. It's
Okay.
what's my and it's 1 mile from my house, which is really good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
which is fabulous, fabulous. And in the meantime, I decided earlier in my practice career, and that's why Pembroke Pines was probably not so good for me, was I wanted to be a specialist. I wanted to
Mm. And
really
what was
dig in.
driving that?
Getting deep. What was really driving it was the experience in veterinary school. Was just you studied for a test, you crammed for it, you opened up your brain, put the stuff in for about an hour until the test was over, and then it left. And then another, you know, uh, microbiology or internal medicine or surgery or radiology, and then you would just move on to the next one, and a whole bunch of large animal stuff that I knew I would never touch a large animal, and it was just such a uh, hurry up and wait experience that I wanted to understand what I was doing better. So I looked into the American Board of Veterinary Practitioners, ABVP, and they had a program that you study your old books, your Guyton physiology and Tizard immunology and your surgery books, and then you got to take a exam, um, and you had to put in some cases, and it sounded like, okay, this is what I wanted to do. So I told my wife I'm going to study for a year or so, and I'm going to take this test and become a specialist. So she said, okay, you can do that. And so I did. And in 1986, I became a canine and feline specialist at the AVDC. And then about a year later, a friend of mine called up and said, there's a dental wet lab in Vero Beach, which is 3 hours away on a Sunday. You want to go? And I said, no, I want to watch football. And he says, no, we'll go. I have a new VW. We'll put the roof down and we'll go. I said, nah, I'm good. And because he owned a small practice too, and he wanted to get into dentistry. So he talked me into going. And this wet lab was given by a human dentist who also was a veterinarian and practiced both. On Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, he did human dentistry. On Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays, he did veterinary work in two separate places. And he was also a periodontist. And it was just so incredible. So
I've never heard
Oh,
of that.
I know. It was so cool. And he became a dentist first, then he went to veterinary school. And he was just so interesting. And I came back and he took us to both practices. We did our cadaver specimens in his veterinary office and had lunch at his human dental office. And the veterinary office anything, wasn't any big shakes, but the human dental office was beautiful. And I came back from that weekend just being amazed on how almost all of my patients needed immediate dental care. That
Mm,
in the past, I was just like a lot of veterinarians, you just wait until the teeth practically fall out and you put them under anesthesia and take the teeth out that have taken out. And I just got deeper and deeper into dentistry. And I was really fortunate because in my shopping center right next door, a human dentist was there and he wasn't real busy. And we befriended each other and he loved animals. So he taught me dentistry. I would go over, I said, I got this
wow.
cool case. And we used to hand process x-rays rather than put them in the digital machine. And he would sit back with me and just teach me. And I bought the equipment, although I started with a Dremel drill, which was all at $52, and no water. And my technician had to drip the water. But at the time, there didn't have a college of veterinary dentistry. This was back in 87. And I told my wife, I said, boy, this would be really cool to become a specialist in this because there aren't any. So I told her, okay, I'm going to study. And there's an academy of veterinary dentistry. And you submit cases, they approve it, and you take a test. And in 1987 or 88, I submitted and I passed the test to become an academy member. And I said, okay, I'm a specialist. And advertise to local veterinarians. Bring your animals that have problems. I certainly can take care of them. And there were probably about 20 or 30 of us that had passed that test around the country. And then AVMA said, oh, it's great that you guys are calling yourself specialists, but you're not a specialist because we had nothing to do with it. AVMA says, in order to be a specialist, like the surgeons or internal medicine, we have to approve it. And we hadn't. If you want to be a specialist, you have to create a college. So there were 5 founding fathers, I'm not one of them, of the College of American Veterinary Dental College. And I told my wife at that time, I said, well, I got to submit more cases and I got to take another test. So that was another year of studying. And I didn't pass the first time. I ran out of time because at the time I passed the written test and I passed the slide test, but the practical test, they had you do 13 procedures. And I spent too much time on each procedure. I just ran out of time. So I told my wife, well, got to come back in a year and I got to practice all year round. So on every Sunday, I would go to the office and practice, which was great because I became a lot better. And I went to some other people that passed the test, their offices around the country and learned better techniques. So it was a great learning experience for me. And then in 1990, I became the 13th veterinary dentist that was certified. And now there are about 220 of them. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's a very, very cool journey, and becoming involved in organized dentistry it was cool too because probably 7 years into becoming a veterinary dentist, I got a call from the president of the college and said, "We'd like you to be on the board." And I said, "Nah, it's not for me. I have my own little practice. I'm doing okay, and yeah, I've never been involved with such a thing." And she kept after me. And I said, okay, I'll go on the board. And I found that the people that were involved in organized dentistry were just so giving and so pure and so everything good that I was on the board for 4 or 5 years, and I became chairman of the nomenclature committee, and I did some credentialing, and then worked my way up to president of the college. And I did that for, I think, probably 2 years. And then when that was over, the Foundation of Veterinary Dentistry, similar to the VIN Foundation, the Foundation of Veterinary Dentistry is an umbrella organization that oversees the annual conference that we put on in different places of the country that has close to 1,500 people, that vendors and veterinarians and technicians that we teach every year for 3 or 4 days. They also put out the Journal of Veterinary Dentistry, and they also give grants for research and give grants for equipment to veterinary schools. So there's a lot of good that organization does, and I was president of that until last year. I did that for 6 years. So it's been a great journey, and I'm still working. I'm working 1 day a week. I see clients on 1 week, and I do surgery the next week, and have a wonderful staff. And I work with a nurse anesthetist, which is just the cat's meow. So I don't really have to worry that much about monitoring the anesthesia and making small little changes along the way. This is someone that's actually certified in anesthesia. So we do a lot of canoodling together to figure out what's best for the patient, and works well.
So you sold your first practice to another veterinarian.
Yes.
Didn't get fully paid for that. You start your second practice.
Yes.
13 miles away.
Right.
And when you start the second practice, you are already a AVMA approved,
board certified, right?
Board certified AVMA approved dental specialist.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to backtrack for just a moment. You mentioned with your first veterinary practice, you sold it, and the veterinarian you sold it to paid, but only for the first few months. Was that the end of the sale, or was there another resolution?
After the veterinarian got all sorts of screwy, then we sold it to two people that owned a pet store that employed a veterinarian, and that was even more of a disaster than the first disaster. And it just did not work down, and they closed it, and it was just a lose-lose all the way around. And it was quite the education experience, because I agreed not to advertise where I'd be as part of a non-compete. At the time, they had these non-compete things, and I agreed not to advertise nor tell any of my patients in Pembroke Pines where I was moving. So I started really from scratch. If I had to do it all over again, I would have never agreed to that. I probably would have just shut down that practice and then just took all the clients, or, told the clients that, hey, I'm leaving, we're going 13 miles away. If you still want to come, here's where I'll be. Here's our office hours. Love to see you.
And what happened with the second practice?
I practiced in the second practice for to 2018 aggressively. I mean, to the point that I was working 6 days a week, and my wife says, "Would you consider taking off a Saturday?" And I said, "No, my clients really need me on Saturday." And she said, "Why don't you try it?" So I took off I started taking off Saturdays, and no one missed me. I mean, it was we had 3 veterinarians, and I was not missed at all. So I started working 5 days a week, and that I'm an avid runner. And at the dental meeting every year, I meet with one of my friends who is a veterinary dentist in Illinois, and we discuss our children and our practices and solve the problems of the world inside of about 2 hours. And he told me one of the consolidators was offering him a very high multiple of profits on what his practice took in. And at the time, if you got one time what your gross was for a practice sale, that was great. And I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
believe what he was getting. So he gave me the person that he was dealing with. And I said, okay, I'll give this person a call. I had no real great reason to sell. And I was going to, my son's a veterinarian. I was going to grant the practice to him. And the prices that they were giving was just an offer very difficult to refuse. They did their due diligence. And I'm not actually, I did my due diligence. I contacted 8 other consolidators, gave them all my financials, and I reviewed each one by one, and the positives and negatives. And each one has a little bit different deal. Some of them will give you stocks, some of them will buy part of them. And in the end, that's what happened to me. I'm a junior partner, so I sold 60%. I still own 40%. And my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. It's
Really?
so amazing how much they take care of your problems, the
Mm-hmm.
consolidators. And it's just, eh, before I sold, I was, lamenting on how much time I spent on not doing what I really love, which is dentistry, which is taking care of my patients, taking care of my clients, and how much time I was spending just taking care of my, at the time, 24, 25 staff and the
Mm-hmm.
other 2 veterinarians that I employed, and just the whole daily drama. The consolidators take care of virtually all of that. And you
Mm-hmm.
become an employee, which is okay. I could see why that's the future of our profession, because then the veterinarians can really practice veterinary medicine. Yeah.
And so you've been now in that situation since 2018,
Yeah.
right?
And I was obligated
Mm-hmm.
to stick around for 3 years, but I really like it. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's
And that allows you the freedom.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But you still get to do the stuff you
Yep.
love.
Yep. And I didn't
Yeah.
sell the real estate, which was nice. So
Mm-hmm.
that'll work into part of my wife and my retirement is the rent that they pay every month.
You mentioned VIN earlier. Are there other resources that you found have been really helpful for you throughout your career, or communities that you feel like you've leaned on, or areas that you find there's a big hole that you think really needs help?
Well, the other areas that I've got to enjoy is teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, the veterinary school is in Gainesville around here, which is 5 hours away. So I don't teach there. But what I really enjoy doing is giving wet labs at my office, because in most veterinary schools, the veterinary students, get literally 1,000 hours on the physiology and the care of a fractured limb. But
Mm-hmm.
in veterinary school, there is virtually, maybe 20 hours, maybe 30 on how to take care of teeth in dogs and cats. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have a dog that comes in with a fractured leg, you're going to refer it, in many places. But if you have a dog that has, or a cat that has dental problems, you're going to take care of it, unless there's something that you want to refer. So dentistry is a day one thing. And so I really like giving wet labs at my office, where we teach veterinarians how to extract teeth and how to read radiographs and how to make dental decisions. And then I also really enjoy working, doing consulting with some of the largest companies, the Verbac and Decra and Pet Lab and Nutramax. And the people there certainly want to get their best product out, but they also want to get the information out to veterinarians. So I enjoy that. I enjoy meetings that some of these big drug companies get veterinary dentists together to talk about our inadequacy. Where we think um, pharma needs to step in and help us. Um, and also with instrument suppliers, because a lot of it is instrumentation. So I feel I help them, and enjoy doing it.
Are there any other things that you want to share about your story or anything that you want sort of our audience to know, or if you could talk to current veterinarians?
Yeah. So tips having to do with VIN. I find when I give lectures and I ask veterinarians if they have posted on the VIN boards, most of them will say no, they're afraid to. And I have found the VIN boards one of the best things, because you get specialists to opine on whatever your situation is, whether it's an endocrinology problem or a cardiology problem or a surgery problem. I mean, really caring, wonderful experts. On the dental boards, there are 9 of us that just, take our time and read your radiographs and just try to help. And one thing Paul said a long time ago, and he had all these specialists in for a conference in Denver, he opined that the specialists on VIN just love to share, and they love the dental community, they love their community, and they just want veterinarians to get better. And that's why they do it. And Paul said, you can't force somebody to do it. They just need to do it. And I have found Paul to be one of the most giving individuals I've ever met.
Agreed.
And just somebody that has his heart so much in the right place for the veterinary community. And VIN is a gift for all of us.
Yeah, it really is. It's a huge gift to the community. It's a huge gift to, pet owners. It's a huge gift to the profession and for the health of our animals.
Yeah. And what people don't realize is that there is a VIN Foundation. And the foundation, if you look on the website, it is deep how it helps students understand their debt, how it helps veterinarians that are having emotional problems or problems with substance abuse to get help. And VIN will help them get help. So again, all part of the community. Obviously all this takes some fundraising. And part of the foundation is for veterinarians to give back, the ones that just love what they do, to go ahead and set part of their estate aside for other veterinarians. Because, I mean, the way our bottom line is that we became veterinarians because we want to help animals. And we need doctors, really great doctors that aren't loaded with debt and loaded with emotional problems to take care of these animals. And if the VIN Foundation can help it, and if they can donate a little money to make that happen, it's a good thing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we don't usually plug that on this podcast, but we appreciate you sharing that.
My pleasure.
Absolutely, especially right now right now this is year-end giving, and we do have a 2, 3, 4 times match through the end of the year. If you feel like giving, we have lots of ways that you can do that. We'll put a link in the episode notes. Jan, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think there's a lot of great lessons here and about passion, and what I really hear is really a passion for learning. Yeah.
It's good. And it keeps on going. Yeah. I mean, I still think that being a veterinarian is the greatest job ever. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I think you shared some of those reasons, and it doesn't mean it was all highs, right? There was definitely some ups and downs and learning a lot of lessons, and the mistakes are how we all learn, right?
Exactly. Good. My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Jan, for your time and for sharing your story with our audience.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Veterinary Pulse. Please check the episode notes for additional information referenced in the podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow, subscribe, and share a review. We welcome feedback and hope you will tune in again. You can find out more about the VIN Foundation through our website, vinfoundation.org, and our social media channels. Thank you for being here. Be well.